Biden's former White House physician and 4 aides have until the end of today to agree to the committee's request for a transcribed interview. If they don't, the committee says it will subpoena them. Former Oversight Chair Jason Chaffetz emphasized the investigation's importance.
Chairman Comer is doing this the right way. You got to bring in the underlying employees. You start getting them on the record under oath, telling us who, how, who authorized this, who was allowed to put in it, who was in the chain of custody of these documents. It is the most powerful thing you have, the signature of the President of the United States.
GOP lawmakers aren't the only ones demanding answers. An energy-focused watchdog group is calling for several government agencies and Congress to look into many of Biden's climate executive orders. They claim those orders were signed with an Autopen without Biden's knowledge. In a letter to the House Oversight Committee, they write, Congress deserves to know how or whether these executive actions were authorized and whether the former president was aware of such orders before they were implemented by the federal bureaucracy. It appears incumbent upon Congress to inquire about all parties involved in these actions, who instructed them to do what and when. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer here to weigh in. But first, senior national correspondent Aishah Hasnie with more on this story. Good morning, Aishah.
Good morning to you, Jackie. So some late-breaking developments overnight. I can tell you that the lawyers for those 4 Biden staffers have responded to this request. If we put it on the screen, you can take a look. It's the 4 staffers to the right of your screen. No interviews have been scheduled yet. They have yet to confirm those by the end of business today to avoid getting slapped with a subpoena. The committee, Jackie, still has not heard yet from Biden's former physician. That is Dr. Kevin O'Connor. So we are watching him closely. Remember, the Oversight Committee is investigating any misuse of the Autopen. They want to know who was in charge of approving all of those executive orders, those pardons that happened in the final months of the administration. So the Bidens have been staying pretty silent, quiet about this congressional probe. But Jill Biden's former press secretary came out yesterday to blast the committee.
First of all, in regards to Chairman Comer, you know, he spent 2 years trying to take on the Biden family, and he came up with nothing. He went fishing in a dry lake. So his record of investigating the Biden family isn't a good one.
Jackie, surprisingly, some congressional Democrats are actually also welcoming this congressional probe, although they say they don't want it to turn into something partisan. Jackie.
All right, Aishah Hasnie, thank you so much. Republican Congressman James Comer of Kentucky, chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Chairman, want to just have you respond very quickly, and thank you for being here, to what we just heard from the former First Lady's press secretary about the last investigation. Have you tell us, what is different this time?
Well, look, he must not have got the memo that Joe Biden pardoned his entire family, 7 family members, because of my investigation. So, their record of dishonesty knows no boundaries. I mean, that is completely false. If the Biden family had done nothing wrong, then there would have been no need to have given them preemptive pardons. And again, that was Joe Biden's last act as president. Did he do it? It was signed, at least 6 of the pardons were signed with the Autopen. So, I don't think that anyone can take anything that anyone who worked in the Biden White House during the last 6 months, I think you can take it with a grain of salt, because their record of dishonesty, again, is on full display with that statement he just issued. Everybody in America knows the Bidens were influence peddling. Now everybody in America knows that Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit to make a lot of these decisions. More and more evidence is coming out from Jake Tapper to other whistleblowers in the administration that some of these bureaucrats, these unnamed bureaucrats in the White House, were using the Autopen to sign Joe Biden's name on very important things like pardons and like executive orders.
And very quickly on the signatures, we hear from this energy group that they're questioning whether many of these executive orders and laws are even valid. In 2005, though, you had the DOJ Office of Legal Counsel determine that presidents can use Autopen to sign bills into law. So what would your committee have to find to make the determination that these EOs, these laws, are null and void?
Who gave the authority for the low-level staffers to take that document, put it in the Autopen and press power to sign Joe Biden's name, because many of those documents were signed on days where Joe Biden wasn't anywhere near the White House. There's no evidence of any email communication between the president and these staffers. We have the Hur report where Robert Hur sat down at length with Joe Biden and concluded that he couldn't even sit in front of a jury because he couldn't even remember the date of his election and of tragic events in his family's life and things like that. So there's plenty of evidence that Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit to make a lot of these decisions. We want to know who actually gave the authority to do these executive orders and these pardons, because again, I think the American people have seen up close and personal, especially during that debate with Donald Trump, that Joe Biden wasn't at the top of his game. This physician, Dr. O'Connor, he continued to give reports saying he was mentally fit and in perfect health. Now we know otherwise, so that's why we're bringing them in.
Now, I want to ask you about this. ESPN host Stephen A. Smith hasn't fully ruled out a White House bid. He argues that one consequence of the legacy media's cover-up of President Biden's decline is this.
It makes Trump look right. Does it not buffer his arguments about lawfare being exercised against him? Does it not buffer his arguments about fake news, fake news, fake news? Does it not buffer the credibility that comes to his arguments that it was a witch hunt?
How do you think Democrats wrestle with this?
I think they know that what Stephen A. Smith just said is true. They know that the American people think that the judiciary under Joe Biden and Merrick Garland was weaponized to attack Donald Trump. I think they know the legacy media networks were lying about Joe Biden's mental health. They were lying about Joe Biden's family, influence peddling the office of the presidency. And when you've got a family that was clearly guilty of influence peddling, a president who was not mentally aware of what was going on, and you're issuing wide-reaching executive orders and pardons, and the only people that are in the White House representing the Biden family are people who were found in our investigation of influence peddling, then it raises a lot of questions as to what was the decision process and who was forging. Because if Joe Biden wasn't authorizing it, someone was forging his name on some very important documents.
I want to ask you about another issue, but I have one last one on this topic because, the basement campaign we all remember. And, a big team of Democrats really carefully managed the Biden presidency from the beginning. Are you at all concerned that, this narrative allowing potentially a handful of people to take the blame for this cover-up will allow the rest of the people involved in all of the failures of that administration to wash their hands of any responsibility and then just sail into the next, Democratic nominee's operation?
Yeah, obviously, that's a concern. That's why we're starting at the bottom. Let's see, as Jason Chaffetz just confirmed on that clip, let's start with the bottom and let's see what the decision-making process was. Because are the people at the bottom going to go down on the ship to protect the higher level people, the Clains and the Jill Bidens and those people that most of us believe were the ones actually calling the shots? We're going to start with the low-level staffers, the unnamed staffers that nobody ever heard of prior to my request to come in before the committee. Let's see who was giving them the directive to use the Autopen, and then we'll go from there.
All right. I want to move on to this. ICE agents arrested an illegal immigrant in Wisconsin. He allegedly wrote a letter threatening to assassinate President Trump. DHS says the 54-year-old Mexican national already has a long rap sheet, and that includes illegally entering the U.S. at least 9 times from 1998 to 2005. He's also been convicted of felony hit and run, criminal property damage, and disorderly conduct involving domestic abuse. Border Czar Tom Homan with this.
He's being detained. He'll be removed. I mean, he's exactly the priority that President Trump has. He's focusing on public safety threats and significant criminal history. Bad decision on his part to make a threat against the president. That's just going to add another felony charge.
Now some in the Trump administration say ICE needs to ramp up its arrests. Top White House aide Stephen Miller and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem are pushing agents to that end. Miller explained why these numbers have to go up.
We are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day, and President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number up higher each and every single day. We can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped, the next American kid can get murdered, the next American family can get splintered and torn apart.
House Republicans passed President Trump's budget bill. It significantly boosts Homeland Security funding, and that bill now faces a tougher road in the Senate. Chairman, I want to ask you about this 3,000 number. Is that an arbitrary number? Is there any risk that Republicans lose the messaging advantage that they have right now by putting a number on it?
I don't think so, and I strongly support Stephen Miller. He knows what he's talking about, and I think it's great to be serious about deporting the criminal illegals, and that's what this administration is doing. And I want to remind everyone, the big, beautiful bill that we just passed out of the House, it provides substantial funding to deport these criminal illegals. It's very expensive to deport them, and we're putting money in this big, beautiful bill to pay for that, to pay for the border wall, and to pay for more border control agents so we can stop the fentanyl, we can stop the human trafficking, and we can stop the flow of people that Joe Biden allowed to come into this country. Now we're going to have to pay to send them back to where they came from. That's unfortunate, but that's something that President Trump said he would do during the campaign, and Stephen Miller just confirmed it, and we're going to support him in Congress.
All right. Chairman James Comer of the House Oversight Committee, thank you very much for your time this morning, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.